Hi, my name is Alessandra Alamia. I am in the class Standard 5 Choral at New Horizon SDA. Today I am going to be telling you what I like about my school. I like that there is supportive teachers in this school that always encourage their students. Like right now, I have a teacher named Mr. Javier Rodriguez. He's always supporting his students and telling them to do their best, as well as Ms. Talita.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Sansores, and I am the Vice Principal of New Horizon SDA School. New Horizon SDA School was established in 1999 with the purpose of serving the community of San Pedro spiritually and academically. We started out with a population of 50 students and 5 teachers. Currently, we have a population of over 500 students, 18 teachers, 2 administrators, and a secretary. Our goal is to increase our classrooms so that we can serve an even bigger population. We look forward for your support.
Hi, my name is Samuel Che, and I'm the principal of New Horizon Seventh-day Adventist School. New Horizon joins the sisterhood of Adventist schools around the world in preparing students for this life and the life to come. New Horizon takes pride in working on behalf of the social life of our students. We also do all our best to work and improve their physical life. And one of the important things we put a lot of effort is the academics. And for that, we do programs that will uplift them, that will make them stronger spiritually, and that will eventually take them to accept Jesus as their personal Savior.
Thanks for supporting
Adventist education.
Good morning and welcome to another session of Defining Your Health. I'm your host, Cameron Ozaeta, and with us today we have a very special guest, Miss Ix-Chel Poot. Welcome, Miss Poot.
Hi, good morning everyone. It's a pleasure to be back at ATN.
Yes, Miss Ix-Chel Poot is the Executive Director for the National Council on Aging.
Yep.
She is also a certified aging specialist, and we will give her all the time she needs today within the hour to describe some challenges and perspectives on our aging population. Welcome again, Ms. Poot.
All right, thank you so much, Brother Cameron. Like I said, a pleasure to be here at ATN. I've been here before.
Okay.
I tune in every Saturday for service. It's always a pleasure to be able to connect and be a part of the church family, even virtually during these times.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but as you said, I work for the National Council on Aging, and for those viewers who might not know, the National Council on Aging is a statutory board, which means that we receive core funding from government. We are connected to the Ministry of Human Development, Families, and Indigenous Peoples Affairs, and we are run by a board of directors.
Board of directors.
Board of directors. And that board of directors is made up of government ministries, civil society, and older persons organizations. And they direct the work of the council through the implementation of the Belize National Policy for Older Persons.
Excellent. Okay. Now, what would we consider to be elder abuse?
Elder abuse. Well, before we get into what is elder abuse, let's talk about who is an older person.
Okay.
So you're going to notice that we have two different things. You're saying elder, I'm saying older person.
Older, okay.
So United Nations defines an older person to be anybody 60 plus.
60 and over, okay.
60 and older. And I say older persons because we note that this is still a person.
Okay.
They are just older.
Okay.
And that is one of the ways that we help to identify older persons as people. Often when we say elderly, in Spanish you'd say los viejitos, people automatically start to think white hair, cane, somebody who
inability to move around and something like a normal.
all of these kind of stereotypical ideas that we have about age. But you will know persons who are 60, who are very active, vital, who are still working, who are still running races.
I read a newspaper, Mandela, some years ago, and a woman, 72, that swam from Cuba to the Florida Straits in 80-something hours.
So we have older persons who are very active regardless of age.
Okay.
But United Nations defines 60 as the age of an older person because at 60 we require different services to maintain health and well-being.
Okay.
So a 60-year-old in going for a checkup, the doctor would have to look at checking their memory. Are there any changes in memory? Checking for non-communicable diseases, which would not only include hypertension and diabetes, but would also look at things like arthritis, heart disease, other things that might relate with age, and then would also look at balance. So those are three very important things to consider as we get older.
Yeah, I'm 50 years old. I'm not up to 60, but I have circulation issues with my left leg, so I'm all ears.
You know, well, the most important thing you can do when you hit 40, and even 50 is not too old, is to begin a steady exercise regime.
Yeah, that's what I noticed.
That actually adds a lot to life.
Quality, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So 60 is the age of an older person.
Okay.
What we also look at is even within the aging bracket, there are different types of older people.
Okay.
So 60 to 65, we would consider the young old. So
Young
these are
old.
the young old.
60 to 65.
So these are people who are able to carry out most of their daily activities with little or no challenges. They're still riding their bicycles, driving their cars, running their own errands. They could still pick up the 5-gallon bottle of water and move it over, you know. And then right around 65 to 70, we have what we call the old. So you realize then that your flexibility has changed. Your ability to lift has changed. You get tired a lot more. If you get sick, it takes your body a little bit extra time to get over whatever sickness has happened. You might develop some kind of intolerance to specific foods that you could have previously. And these things become more notable. So your lifestyle starts to change. And then right around 75, we have what we call the old.
75?
75.
The old.
The old.
Okay.
And that means that at that age, any change in your health status has very serious implications. So somebody who is 75 and has a flu, that person runs a higher risk of developing pneumonia or bronchitis or other breathing problems if it's not addressed early. Someone at 75 who falls and has a break is a much more serious condition than someone who is 60. Someone who is 75 who has a stroke will take a longer time to recover and may have a continuous disability. So those are some of the breakings that we see within aging and the aging category. So a lot of times we want to think older persons, nicely granny, way here with the cane, the rock on the veranda. But it's actually a little bit more complex than that when we talk about older persons and the aging process. And it's important to note that we begin aging from the day we are born. You become one day older. You know, so the process, it is when we reach our old age, you're actually cashing in all those checks that you wrote as a young person. So if you were roughing up that body, you weren't exercising, you weren't drinking water the way you're supposed, you were staying up late, you know, you weren't maintaining good social relationships, because what we're going to talk about today is elder abuse, and that links directly to our social relationships. So if you weren't maintaining good social relationships, good interpersonal relationships, we see how all of those breaks accumulate in later life and causes for challenges as we become older.
Wow, deep. Right? Okay, so now then, so springboarding from that now, would we go into that first question?
What is elder abuse? All right. So elder abuse is any knowing, intentional neglect of an older person by the caregiver or any person who is in authority, and this can cause harm, serious risk to harm, and it is often perpetrated against a vulnerable adult. And elder abuse can be both intentional and unintentional. So there are different factors that impact it. But if we look at elder abuse in general, there are 6 main types.
6 main types.
So when we hear the word abuse, a lot of times we want to think of hitting, punching, why they beat me up,
Yeah, real
kind of physical.
yeah.
So that is one type of elder abuse. Physical abuse.
Okay.
And that also includes restraining an older person.
Wow.
Locking an older person up. Those are all types of physical abuse with an older person.
Okay.
There's also sexual abuse that is perpetrated against older people.
Wow.
And that is any unwanted sexual advance or requirement to perform any sexual act against the will of the older person. Neglect. And neglect can look at simply not providing for the needs of that older person. So the older person doesn't get water, doesn't have access to food, doesn't receive his or her bath. These are all types of neglect. And neglect can actually happen within families.
Yeah.
And then there is emotional exploitation and financial abuse.
Exploitation. Okay.
And those two go hand in hand. And unfortunately, this is one area that we see fairly common here in Belize. They require an older person to sign over their house, their land, their bank account, with the idea that I will take care of you because you have given me whatever it is that they need. And the person takes the resources, takes the house, takes the bank account, and the older person is never able to benefit from it.
My mom has been doing caregiving in the state, well, used to know for like 28 years or so. I mean, and she often told me there was some contact that she knew who was in the same business, and they got the people, the sick age, to sign over their house and land and stuff. Indeed.
Yeah, it does
happen. And then eventually they conveniently put them out of the way. They gave them morphine in increasing doses until eventually they were out.
It's become very fragile. We see exploitation and abuse for older persons is something as similar as you have an older parent who has a good enough pension and he or she is stocked with groceries. And then you'll find the children come in, they clean out groceries for the month.
Wow.
Again, grocery shopping in a mommy kitchen.
Yeah, imagine.
And they leave, and then that older person does not have any food items for themselves. That happens as well. Taking an older person's tools, removing anything that is for the benefit of the older person that you are not entitled to is a form of exploitation and financial abuse.
The older person won't be needing these things.
No, very ways that they think about it. And there's also emotional abuse. You find that older people also become very sensitive in older age. They're also very trusting to a large extent, and they are always willing to help. So you can come and you can tell them a sub story. You say, oh, you know, this happened. I've seen this before, you know. My husband left me. I have their 3 kids. I need to do something. And sometimes the other people take them into their house. Sometimes they will continuously give them money. But you also have cases where they are emotionally abused, where they start to downgrade them. Oh, you're not good for nothing. You take up my space. Why you want to do this? And so these are all challenges that occur within the aging. And then, of course, there's the abandonment.
Wow.
Where an older person is simply left on his or her own.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot more in Belize happening to older men. And that particularly older men. And that particularly happens when older men have more than one family or have a broken family structure. And then they become older and they need care. And you'll hear, well, my father never took care of me, so I don't see why I need to take care of him.
Wow.
And so that's what I told you earlier. There is a social aspect to the relationship. And so the older person becomes abandoned. And then in abandonment, it really means that he or she has no access to any of the resources or things that they need.
Wow.
That they need.
That's deep. Okay, so at least 6 main categories.
6 main categories, yeah.
Okay. So then, based on that elder abuse now, how can we tell, what would be some of the symptoms we could identify as this person is in an abusive situation?
Warning signs are much the same. In physical abuse, it will be the appearance of bruises or injuries that they are not willing to explain. You know, something that looks tricky. But it's also, you have to be very careful as well, because as we become older, our body shows things a bit differently. So there are some older people who bruise easily. So you have to kind of be wary of some of the physical signs. But also one of the things that you would be able to see is a change in that person's behavior.
Okay.
You have a vibrant, vital older person
Mhm.
who now doesn't speak very often,
Okay.
who doesn't want to do any of the things that they used to do before. You can also see changes when it comes to their financial status. Their house no longer has the groceries that they used to have.
Oh.
They have bills that are not being paid.
Okay.
You can see that the lifestyle has definitely changed. Those are visual clues. And then you can listen for auditory clues,
Okay.
things that they're saying. The
Okay.
person expresses a certain amount of fear towards a caregiver
Wow.
or towards a member of the society. So, you know, all of a sudden, they start to recognize that there's something wrong with the neighbor. Like, no make too much noise because I don't want a neighbor here. Why is that an indication?
Okay.
One of the ones that I like to point out, I live with my mother, who is an older person. And so sometimes she would be asked to do something,
Okay.
and she would say, I need to run it by my daughter to see if she's available.
Okay.
And that's normally because I have to pick her up and take her wherever she needs to go and then bring her back.
Okay.
But it's different when an older person says, I need to find out if I could go.
Oh.
See, my mom isn't finding out if she can go, because she can go if she wants to. She's finding out if I can take her.
Okay. Good.
Those are two different things.
Okay. Okay.
So what you would also want to look at is, does the older person now have control over his or her movements? Because if they no longer have control over his or her movements, that is a sign that something has
Yeah, there's
changed.
some limiting inhibition there.
So does that person have to ask permission
Somebody.
to do something that they want to do, or to use their own materials? Right? And then unexplained withdrawal from normal activities,
Okay.
or depression, which we talked about earlier. And then there's also behaviors, belittling the older person, telling them they're not good for anything, threatening them, you know, not you're nothing to eat. And other uses of power control by either spouse or caregivers or even children, which are indications of verbal abuse. We have this very kind of touching video. The council produced these videos in recognition of Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is held on June 15th.
Okay.
And this particular one that we're going to show is one that really caused a lot of people to take notice, because it is a subtle way in which we abuse older persons.
Okay.
And very often people don't think about it in the way that it is an abuse, but it is. So we're going to show the video, and then we're going to look at maybe just 2 or 3 indications of how that video translates to abuse.
Signs. Okay.
I was awaiting you to carry me right down my capacity.
But I don't have time to carry my smart to the language. Nobody here? I know why you think you need to go anyway.
It happens every day, but most Belizeans don't see it. Older persons across the country are victims of elder abuse. They don't know it. We may not realize it, but their lives show it. It happens every day in our homes and in our neighborhoods. Stop elder abuse.
So if you look at that video, you realize that an older woman is still relatively active. She can get herself dressed. She has the desire to have friends, to socialize.
She's ready to go.
Ready to go out, except that she needs someone to take her out.
Okay.
And the grandson comes home, and what does he do?
No, he's like saying, well, you don't need to go out.
You don't need to go out, right? So if that is that older person's only out for that day, for that week, for that month, that will mean that that older person remains confined to the home for whatever period of time until somebody decides, okay, now we have time to take you out. And if you notice, he said he didn't have time to take her to go long bench at Miss Martha, but he sat down and turned on the television. So all of her needs, everything that is her social well-being is totally ignored because it is not considered important
Yeah.
to that person at that time.
Wasn't convenient for him. Yeah.
So in order for us to age well, we must not only maintain physical health, but we must maintain mental and social health.
Mental and social.
Mental and social health. So that means being other persons being able to meet and connect with their peers. We don't talk about it often enough, but the aging process is really a process of loss. We begin
Process of
loss.
Okay.
We begin losing. We begin losing our physical abilities to do certain things, and then we begin losing our close relationships, our spouses, our siblings, our friends.
Yeah, I know
And
this.
that is why one of the reasons it is very important for older persons to be able to meet and socialize, because it is good for the overall well-being.
Okay.
When my grandfather died, he was in his 90s.
Wow.
And he lived in a village in Corozal. There was only one person in the village who referred to him as boy.
Okay.
One peer.
Okay.
Everybody else was Don Lucio.
Okay.
Right? So that was the one connection that he had that still remained to his youth. And it's important to maintain those
So he treasured
connections.
that connection.
That was his friend. I mean, when my grandfather passed away, his friend's family eventually relocated him to live within a more structured family. But that is something that does happen. The older we become, the more we lose and the more we need to reestablish new social connections.
Let me stick a pin right there. Case in point, my own mother, she's 71 years old. She's living in California. She's basically by herself. I have two other brothers over there. One is in Utah. One is in Southern California, virtually at the border with Mexico, almost. I mean, and she is so distant from everybody. I mean, but yet I said, Mom, I've been over there 4 or 5 times trying to get her to come to Belize, but oh, if I come, it's too hot. Over 85 degrees Fahrenheit, my blood pressure goes sky high. And when my temperature goes up, I go down. And I'm not sure I'll get the medical help, the care that I need, you know, in a short space of time that I would need it.
And this is where
How do I help?
This is where outreach ministry from our churches play a critical role in being able to reach out to older members. So that is simply being able to have an outreach ministry that would have a phone tree system.
Yeah.
So that you would have 5 or 6 members who make 3 or 4 calls over a period of a week.
Okay.
So you have these 5 or 6 members. Say for argument's sake, 5 members. Each member is assigned 4 older person.
Okay.
You are just supposed to call that person 1 time for the week.
Once a week, okay.
That church alone or that ministry alone will impact the lives of 20 seniors in 1 week.
Man, that would be good.
Right?
Excellent.
So that is one way in which outreach ministries can help. The other way is by actually visiting and providing social outlets. So sometimes it's rearranging church schedules so that your church service will be taking place. You have a church service that takes place at 10 in the morning and one that takes place 7 at night. So your older person might not be able to come out as easily for your 7 o'clock Wednesday night service. But at 10, they can go to a prayer meeting. You have your prayer meeting at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock when the service is ended. You give everybody a little sack lunch and you have done 2 things. You have provided social stimulation for the older person and you have ensured that they have a meal.
Right.
So you are
at least one significant meal for the day.
One significant meal for the day. And you will find that by doing this, more older people will come out and they will bring their friends. I mean, it's a little bit more difficult now because of COVID, you know.
Not impossible.
But not impossible. But not impossible. The council actually runs digital literacy courses for seniors.
Digital literacy.
Digital literacy,
That sounds high tech.
where we connect them to Zoom and other platforms so they can meet, socialize, talk. And this is something that we can also do with older persons from the church virtually. So those are ways in which you can see practical things that our ministry can do to improve the lives of older persons.
And I like the part about visiting, they're actually visiting them in their home so you could, you know, they're monitoring their progress week to week. Yeah.
And that is actually the greatest defense an older person has against elder abuse. You will find that older people are more susceptible to elder abuse when they are left alone and they have no perceived network of friends.
Yes, I know one elderly person, they had no one else but a certain individual, and that person took advantage of them, used their car, did whatever, and when they tried to tell them to do certain things, it was like, there was an outrage,
Yeah,
temper outburst,
no defense.
physical hitting too. Physical abuse stepped in, and eventually the person had to be put in prison.
No defense, right?
Yeah.
But once they have a structure of friendship, if
Mhm.
I know that every Tuesday Miss Mary gets a call from her church family, then I know I can't go mess with Miss Mary on Tuesday.
Very good. And if she gets a call every day,
If she gets a call every day, I know
Somebody-
I can't go mess with Miss Mary
so there's
because
monitoring, she has
somebody knows
monitoring.
what is happening,
Exactly.
and so that improves the older
And
person's
of course, I think
resilience.
some of them have they hook up to some service where they could press a button for emergencies too, right?
There is a service like that available here in
In
Belize.
Belize? Oh,
Yes, there is a service like that available here in Belize called Safe at Home.
Safe at home.
It's available through Price and Company.
Price and
It's a
company.
little bit pricey.
Okay.
And it's mostly targeted if you are living abroad
Okay.
and you have an older person living here, you can actually pay for the subscription. And someone will call and check in with the older person daily,
Daily.
if that's what you want, or they will have an emergency response if anything happens.
Yeah, because many of them don't want to be in some kind of caregiving home or like,
Well,
elder-
many of them don't want to, and we don't advocate for institutionalizing older people,
Mhm.
except in the cases where they need
Old folks home, yeah.
specific kinds of
Treat-
care,
Okay.
or they are at risk of being abused, or they're at risk of being abusers.
Oh.
Because older persons can also, due to dementia and other challenges, become abusive
Yes.
and combative.
My mom used to be a caregiver, and she told me sometimes the old lady takes the shoes and throw it at her and wants to
Yeah.
slap her.
If the family members are not trained in how to deal with those kinds of challenges,
Yeah.
the situation can deteriorate.
Exactly.
But-
But then the person giving the care may want to retaliate,
Yes, and so you have a very
Explosive,
difficult
yeah.
situation
become there.
there. So there are reasons why placing an older person in an institution, in some cases, might
Just
be the best course of action for that
Okay.
older person. But for the most part, we advocate for older people to
In their
remain
family.
within their families,
Yes.
within their homes.
Yes.
But Belize has very limited access to residential care.
Okay.
We have 3 residential homes that are supported by government.
Okay.
So there is Golden Haven,
Mhm.
there is Sister Cecilia's,
Okay.
and there is Octavia Waite. Now, Sister Cecilia's and Octavia Waite are run jointly by the government and HelpAge.
Okay.
And then there are 2 private facilities, which is Breadfruit Gardens
Breadfruit
and
Garden.
My Cielo Blue.
Breadfruit Garden sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Close by.
Yeah, so those 2. And then the cost of care is also
You
astronomical.
mentioned my Cielo Bill.
My Cielo Blue, yes.
So how many in total we have in Belize?
That would be 5,
5.
6. There is actually Casa Kanchan, which is in San Joaquin, but they provide care for abandoned older men only.
Abandoned older men. Okay. So how many of these that you mentioned are actually in the Belize district?
In the Belize district, 4. Sister Cecilia's, Sister Cecilia's, Breadfruit Gardens, My Cielo Blue, and Golden Haven.
Golden Haven. Okay.
So in the southern part of the country, there are no residential
Wow.
facilities.
Okay.
In Orange Walk, there's no residential.
Okay. So viewers, take note. This could be a venture that we could branch into. Right? I mean, in the sense of, people who are sincerely concerned about providing this kind of care, and at the same time, it could be something.
I would tell your viewers not to venture into it lightly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's not something just.
It's very complex.
Yeah. Okay.
And when you enter into care for older persons,
Mhm.
you're really entering into end of life care.
A long-term thing.
It's very long term,
Okay.
and the persons in your care will more than likely deteriorate in health, need more
so you-
care, and you will have to be prepared for end of
Perfect.
life.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons why I always tell people it's not something that you wake up today and say, this will be a good idea.
Yeah.
It is quite complex if you are going to do it properly.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, viewers, thank you for being with us so far. At this time, we'll take a short break, and we will be right back.
What if every older person had what many of us take for granted?
Technology at our fingertips.
And the ability to use it.
What could it mean for Belize if
All of us could reach our full potential with technology.
Digital equity means that we all have the tools and and ability to participate in a digital society.
It means being able to complete my schoolwork.
It means being able to work remotely.
It means being able to shop and pay my bills online.
Means being able to stay connected with family and friends.
Digital equity.
Harnessing technology
To change the way we age.
Get the flu vaccine. It will not protect you against coronavirus. But remember that over 20,000 people died of the influenza in 2019. We don't want to add to any of the mortality. Make sure that you use simple, practical, preventive measures. That way, you will be healthier and those around you too. We're in a global crisis, a pandemic, and people are blaming a virus.
Putting God first can be difficult. What can we learn from Daniel that will help us put God first in our lives today? Daniel was a young man when he was taken into captivity to Babylon, the capital of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. King Nebuchadnezzar always took the best and brightest young men as captives from the many nations he conquered. He would then teach them the Babylonian science and religion, knowing that they would significantly contribute to the expansion of his kingdom. 10,000 young people were taken along with Daniel, and from them, the best of the best were sent to the palace. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were some of these. Their first test was with food. In fact, since the time of Eden, God's people have been tested with food. Food has been a representation of either devotion to God or rejection of His word. But in their case, putting God first could have cost them all the privileges afforded them, or worse, they could lose their lives. However, these young men decided to put God first, no matter what happened. They couldn't be forced or bribed to do otherwise. Faithfulness with their diets not only gave them superior physical strength, but, most importantly, greater mental and spiritual discernment. So, it was not by chance that they became the top students in the Babylon University. Later, Daniel would be put in charge of all other scientists, while his three friends would eventually become the top leaders of Babylon's capital city. All this because they decided to put God first. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were willing to be burnt alive rather than compromise. They said, "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and He will deliver us. But even if He does not, we want you to know, Your Majesty, we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." As an older man, Daniel would rather be thrown into a den of lions than to stop praying first thing in the morning. But God came through again, and Daniel lived to praise Him and become the prime minister of Babylon. Daniel put God first. His example compels us to do the same. As the deacons collect the tithe and promise, we are challenged to put God first.
Grateful people take better care of themselves. Researchers Emmons and McCullough found that study participants who kept a weekly gratitude journal exercised 1.5 hours more than the group who recorded daily hassles. In another study with adults having congenital and adult-onset neuromuscular disorders, participants who jotted down their blessings nightly reported more hours of sleep each night, spending less time awake before falling asleep, and feeling more refreshed upon awakening. That's a fact. But there's hope. Each of us has a list of health habits that could use improvement. Hours of sleep, regular exercise, eating more fruits and vegetables, drinking more water, etc. This week, enhance your lifestyle change efforts by spending a few quiet moments each day counting your blessings. After all, positive behaviors are driven by a positive attitude.
And girl, I sick and tired of this old man to take up my space and my time. That's so loud. What? Don't like he could hear me? I don't know where to wait for. Why he can't just go sleep and wake up?
happens every day, but most Belizeans don't see it. Older persons across the country are victims of elder abuse. They don't know it. We may not realize it, but their lives show it. It happens every day in our homes and in our neighborhoods. Stop elder abuse. World Elder Abuse Day, June 15th. Let's all treat older persons with respect in our homes, in our communities, and in our country. For more information on elder abuse, contact the National Council on Aging, phone 822-1546, email ncabze@yahoo.com, or log on to www.ncabz.org.
Welcome back, viewers. This is Defining Your Health. I'm your host, Cameron Ozaeta. With me, our guest, Miss Ix-Chel Poot. And Miss Ix-Chel, what do you have to tell our viewers today?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you. We've been talking about not so fun a topic, elder abuse, and some of the challenges that come along with aging. We just want to remind our viewers at this time that if you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, you can just drop those in the chat. We'll be responding to those. And if you missed the earlier parts of the segment, what we really covered is looking at who is an older person, what are different types of elder abuse, warning signs of elder abuse. And if you caught us during the break, you would have seen that video just now with a caregiver making comments regarding an older person in their care and how detrimental those kinds of comments are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, what are causes of elder abuse?
What are causes of elder abuse? Well, one of the things that we see very often is caregiver burnout.
Okay.
What is caregiver burnout? When a person becomes in charge of the care of another person, that person automatically becomes a caregiver. And we often recognize caregivers for mothers. Mothers are caregivers of small children, and you see the baby, mommy, 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 mommy.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it frazzles you.
Saps your energy.
It saps your energy. And so the caregiver becomes tired. In elderly care, and it often increments to becoming more and more care, the caregiver is very often one person. And it's around the clock care. And it doesn't get easier. It gets harder. When we are caregiving for children, we are getting them ready to become more independent. They will eventually be able to bathe themselves, make their own sandwiches, clean themselves up, get ready for school, do their own homework, go about your business kind of thing.
Groom yourself.
But with an older person, very often we're looking at a decline, where before I just needed to heat a meal that you've already prepared, I now need to prepare the meal for you. Where you just needed help in setting up the bathroom, I now need to take an hour to help you have a bath. Where you didn't need my help to wash your clothes, I now need to wash your clothes, hang out your clothes, help you put on these clothes. Extremely great and overwhelming. And unless that person is able to have a network or an outlet, the caregiver breaks. They lose patience. They lose a sense of well-being because they themselves are fatigued. And when this happens, that is when we see cases of neglect begin to manifest themselves because they are tired. And so very often caregiver burnout will attribute for unintentional elder abuse. The person isn't doing these things because they want to, but because they themselves are not well and they need a break. So it's really necessary to have a network of care. And then another case that we see is broken families and homes. We have parents who have unreconciled issues with children. And so the children don't want to take care of the parents, or siblings have problems within the family structure. Mommy may always love she more than he may love me, so why I have to be me?
Let him or her take care of mommy.
You know, daddy give he all the money anyway, so why then he ask me if he help pay for this? And so these unreconciled differences, these resentments, these create a lot of challenges when the older person needs care. And that is why it's very important for us to maintain healthy families, because healthy families create a network of care for caregivers and are able to share the burden of care. So if I have, for example, I have 4 siblings, there's 4 of us. So my mom who is our only parent, I recognize that there are certain cares that I must provide for her. If mommy needs to go to a doctor, that me the care on. But if mommy needs something fixed around the house, one of my brothers will do it.
So basically, you all have set up that structure where...
So we have a structure in place where we all play a dynamic role in what must happen to her. And those roles have had to shift as she becomes older, and they will continuously shift as she becomes older. In some cases, there was a case that we worked with, we did a family session. There were 6 sisters, and the sisters were able to come to an agreement. Who will prepare meals on what day, who will be sleeping over at mommy's house, who will be doing this, who will be doing that, and they are able to share the burden of care.
So the schedule is set up.
So no one person is overwhelmed.
Let me throw a little scenario. Suppose this parent shows a special affection to only one of these siblings, right? Repeatedly, every time they come to visit one sibling, and then now that parent becomes sick, and the other say, oh, well, let that one that gets all the showing of affection deal, you know?
That is where you have the broken family relation.
Yeah, because
broken family relation.
You know, it's like, wow.
In those cases, what the family and social services actually does this. You can actually have mediation sessions with families, and families can actually come to agreement.
So who would be the...
Maybe the Department of Social Services, a social worker.
Okay.
So what might happen is, mommy will never come to live at my house, but we can all come into an agreement. Not everybody will put $15, $25 every week, and we will pay for a caregiver to help take care of mommy in whoever's house, right? And so even in that case, no one person has the full financial burden or the full burden of physical care. So there are ways to mitigate, but you have to be open to look at it. You know, I'm always reminded that there is only one commandment with a promise.
Honor your father and your mother. Fifth commandment.
Yeah. So from a Christian perspective, we must be able to provide for those who are unable to provide for themselves. And it's not easy. It's not easy. And then the third reason that we would see causes of elder abuse is that there is a history of abuse within that household.
History of abuse.
So it could be that the parents had been abusive towards the children. It could be that it was a domestic abuse situation, and that abuse just carries on within a cycle. So if you have a situation where a father or husband was verbally or physically abusive to a mother, the chances are that an adult son will replicate those behaviors is highly increased, because that is how that child has learned to relate to their parent, and vice versa, And then if it is a case where the children were abused by the parents, very often the children are looking to kind of reciprocate. There are all these unresolved feelings that are still there. You know, you used to lock me outside, you never used to feed me, and now you need me.
For retaliation,
And so, and we are human, and unless we are able to heal from some of these things, they do manifest themselves. And it comes back to what I was telling you earlier. The checks that you write in your younger life, you cash them all in when you become older.
Older years, older years.
So, but what we do also note is that elder abuse happens 95% of the time by a family member.
By a family member.
By a family member. By a family member, which is somebody who is in direct responsibility of the care of the older person.
Okay, that's significant. Excellent. Okay, I think you touched on the warning signs already.
We talked about some warning signs already.
Okay, and who generally are the abusers? You said for the most part family members. Okay. Why should we care? Okay, what should I do if I suspect elder abuse?
If you suspect that there is a person who is being abused, an older person being abused, one of the first things you can do for an older person in an abusive situation is be a friend.
Okay.
Be a friend. As we spoke about earlier, having a network and somebody to relate to builds the resilience of that older person.
Okay.
Stay in contact with that older person. And because you will notice that the abuser will be less likely to abuse if they are in fear of being witnessed carrying out the abuse.
Okay. So once they realize that other people are keeping in touch on a regular basis,
And it also translates to why older people don't often report elder abuse themselves, because it's 95% of the time a family member. And nobody wants to say,
report on their own family.
Me, daughter never give me anything to eat. My son locked me in this house. My niece never helped me bathe for 1 week. You know, nobody wants to say these things out loud. And neither do the family members want people to know, because deep down inside we know it's wrong.
Yeah.
So by being able to staying in contact with the older person, we minimize some of the trauma that they are taking place in. The second thing is you try to build an awareness with the older person.
Build an awareness.
You build an awareness. Have them recognize that there's something wrong in the situation, especially if it is a case where an older person has aged into the situation. So like we spoke about earlier, like a woman who was in a domestic situation and she has just become older and her son is carrying out the same behaviors her husband was, then this is her normal. So you need to gently try to build a response. You know, Miss Mary, it's not okay that they only feed you 1 time today. You know? And so when you start building that awareness to help them see what the situation is dangerous, then you can start to help them figure out ways to go. For an older person, moving out of an abusive situation is a lot scarier than a younger person. Because younger people, they will tell you, we'll get you a job, we'll clean you up, we'll put you here. Older people can't do that. They're very often financially reliant on their abuser. And if you move me from here, where are you going to put me?
Yeah. They might have their own vehicle, for example, but somebody needs to drive them.
You know,
like
they don't want to go into, you think we have a challenge with thinking about putting an older person at home in our society. If you get put in an old folks home, that means your family dash your way.
Exactly.
So older people are even more resistive to being an institution than young people are to placing them in an institution. So you have to be gentle with how you approach the subject, because if you are too quick, if you pass judgment, you know you're no good son, do this, the older person shuts down. They will break the friendship because now you are attacking them, and it will cause for you not to be able to help them through. And then, of course, in cases where you are certain, or there's something that you see that is not right, and very often you have that gut feeling, something you don't feel correct. You can make a referral to the Department of Human Services. You can make a referral to the police department, the domestic violence unit, especially in cases where you suspect the older person is being physically abused. You can contact us at the National Council on Aging. We will take the referral and we will move it forward. And then you can also report to a local older persons organization. So, and you can also report to a justice of the peace.
Oh, really? JP?
Yes. Who will and is obligated to also help in the response. So if you report to a JP, he or she may get the community policing unit to go in, or they might contact one of the other organizations. But if you feel the need to have someone else make the referral, because we get anonymous referrals too. People who call and say, you know, I see this
situation,
and I don't really want to get involved. I'm not sure, but you know, feel correct. So what you would need to have is address where we can locate the older person. How can we find this older person? If the older person has a working phone number, or if you want to be the contact number, and the social worker will contact you only to be able to reach the older person, not to be the person that has made this referral. If you don't want to be, you can if you want to. And then the other important thing, which is probably the most frustrating thing, is that within the laws of Belize, we have nothing that protects older people.
There are no laws to protect?
There are no laws to protect them. So when you report a case of elder abuse, and this is why it is important to maintain the friendship, the older person will eventually have to make a statement against the abuser. And unless they have a strong support network, very often they don't.
They will not.
So they will have to say, yes, my son hit me, I have a problem with it, and this is what I want to do. Yes, my daughter had me locked in this room for 3 days. I have a problem with it. This is what I want to do. Yes, my caregiver took my bank card. I don't know what she's done with it. I haven't seen the bank statement. I don't know how much of my money she took. I want to press charges.
So they have to commit to certain action
They
want to
have
take.
to.
Okay.
They have
what
to
action I want.
commit to recognizing and reporting the abuse themselves. No one can do it on their behalf because of the ways the laws are structured at this time.
Excellent. Okay, so these are some of the things we should do then if we suspect elder abuse. So there are some phone numbers that we could probably get.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, the council's number is on the slide on the screen. That's 822-1546.
Okay.
If you contact us at the council, then we can give you contact numbers for all the other organizations. The police numbers and the Department of Human Services numbers are located right in the phone book.
Okay, good. So viewers,
right in the phone.
Please take note of these numbers and information. We would encourage you to get in touch with your local entities to stop any abusive situation that you might see undergoing or you suspect might be in progress.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, so how big is this abuse problem in Belize?
In Belize.
As far as you all.
Okay, so if we think about it, well, let's talk about it globally. I can tell you about it globally. The pandemic really exposed a lot more cases of elder abuse. I can honestly say that over the last 4 to 6 months, we have received at least one case of elder abuse every week at the council.
So every week?
Yes, which is astronomical because we don't respond to cases of abuse. We just provide
That's in the
referral.
past 4 to 6 months.
Yes.
Mercy.
But what we have seen last year, we ran some figures with the domestic violence unit. So we're looking at cases that have been reported.
Domestic
Violence unit. Okay. So those are cases that reached the police station because there was more than likely a physical altercation that involved an older person.
Okay.
In 2016, for the entire year 2016, there were only 11 cases reported.
Cases 2016.
In 2020, up until September 2020, there were 31 cases responded. So you look at the cases just ballooning. And these are the ones that are reported.
Ouch.
It was estimated by the World Health Organization that 1 in 6 older persons during the mandatory lockdown experienced some type of elder abuse around the world.
Around the world. Wow.
So
1 of the 6 elderly people are being abused.
It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem.
You know, and with lockdowns, the more people are confined into a limited space, people want to get out and they tend to.
With everything else, and not only the lockdowns, you know, the severe economic strain that some families have gone through. You've got households who had
loss of employment.
One who had both parties working to one party working to no party working to trying to figure out how it is. And 61% of all our seniors in Belize have no access to pensions.
61%.
61%. So a large portion of our older people either had small mom and pop shops that have had to close down because of the pandemic, or they were very reliant on family to provide for their everyday needs. So the challenges are great for older people.
That's significant. Okay, so so basically, if we report an abusive situation, who would be basically in charge of providing the help or the assistance to that?
Okay, so when you report a case of elderly abuse, the case is directly referred to the Department of Human Services.
Okay.
And they will assign a caseworker. That caseworker will go in and they will carry out an assessment and an investigation.
Okay.
And depending on what they ascertain, then there will be an intervention. Interventions can include simply assisting families to create a care plan.
Okay.
In cases that the family has everything in place, but they are just not aware of some of the mistakes that they are making, and they can actually learn new skills.
So basically, you're saying in this scenario, the family structure is more or less supportive.
Supportive, but
they need some guidance.
They have some guidance. So it could be something as simple as they have an elderly in their care, and they have been leaving that older person alone for extended periods of time because both parents work, the children are away at school, they haven't paid for a caregiver to come in, and so you can just help them create a care plan that addresses the needs of the older person, put in an emergency plan, and help them to integrate activities that will include the older person, and the family would stabilize. Right? So there are cases like that. And then there are cases where the older person might need to be removed. And those are cases where there has been clear signs of abuse, the family needs a greater intervention. This can happen if there's been a history of abuse, there's severe caregiver burnout, and then you help to build the network and the capacity of that family. And then most of the time, what it also involves is connecting the older people to social systems within their community.
Within the community.
So if it is connecting them with their local HelpAge branch, connecting them with their local clinic, all of those things.
And the local church.
And their local church.
Yeah.
If the churches have registered, have indicated that they have a ministry that will respond, yes, definitely.
Excellent.
Connecting them to their local church.
Yeah. I'm just reflecting back on something you said earlier. I know of one caregiver who had to go on a little errand, asked somebody to fill in for them with an elderly person. The person in charge was watching the television, couldn't hear good when the elderly was crying for help. And so the person kept watching the program on the TV. The elderly person went, fell, tried to walk, fell, broke their hip, some bone, and that was it.
Well, you see, that's the challenge, because they will always tell you that it's like anybody in your care, you can't zone out for the TV.
Exactly.
You have to be aware of your surroundings. You always have to be aware of your surroundings.
I think the person who was asked to fill in had poor hearing, and then they hear the elderly crying out. So serious, sometimes things that spoil the minds.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah. You know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah, there needs to be serious intervention.
Yeah.
Reliable. Okay. Okay. Now then, why does this elder abuse remain quote unquote invisible?
Lack of reporting, and like we mentioned earlier, older people will be hesitant to report that a family member has mistreated them because of the stigma that occurs there. And sometimes we don't recognize the signs or what constitutes elder abuse because we have an idea of who an older person is. And I saw this very clearly when we had our senior steps dancing for Health Club in Belmopan.
Yeah.
Feel like, my old lady need to dance. You know, and so this kind of idea of what an older person should and shouldn't be doing, and so we don't often think about some of the things that are more challenging that come along with it. And it's just like when we do sexual health and aging workshops for older people, people go, why?
Okay, so are there like programs or outlets where young elderly people can flex more of themselves physically, be more actively, physically active, things like that?
And most of the social clubs, like your HelpAge Center, your co-op, most of the organizations that have social gatherings for older people have a exercise component built onto it.
Because like I think you mentioned earlier, they need to be more physical as challenge, you know, in the sense to keep certain figures active. Yeah. That helps to maintain mental health too. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Let's see. What would be an estimate of the amount of victims caused by elder abuse?
So we said about earlier, so it varies because it's something that's still being reported in Belize. But worldwide, estimates go between 1 and 10 to 1 and 6 whether a person is a victim of elder abuse.
All right. Okay. Is there anything people can do locally here to reduce the risk of elder abuse?
All the things we've talked about earlier, maintaining relationships, keeping an eye out on your neighbors. I mean, one of the things that COVID really has done is break the way that we react to neighbors.
Okay. So we need to be more...
We need to be more neighborly.
More neighborly,
conscientious.
Okay, good. Sensitive to these things. Okay. All right. What can we do then as viewers and people in general to help?
The work of your local organizations who deal with older persons.
Okay.
You know, some of the things that the National Council on Aging does, we also do family caregiving sessions. So if your family is transitioning to care for an older person and you contact us, we set up a one-on-one session to help you create a care plan. The council doesn't provide services, and that is something that is very strange. I know when we talk about elders, everybody assumes that, you know, you provide meals and wheels program, exercise program, all of these things. But the council is really set up to implement policy. And so we focus mainly on capacity building. Similarly, so we look at building the capacity of families and caregivers, and we look at building the capacity of older persons themselves.
Building the capacity of family and
caregivers. Building the capacity of families themselves.
Good. Okay. Okay, viewers, well, our time has come to an end. And we trust that you've been blessed with our discussion today. Miss Ix-Chel Poot, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Were there any final words you wanted to say to our viewers?
Well, I just want to remind you to treat your older people with respect, because one day you will be one of them. One day you'll be one of them.
That's for sure.
So we have to build the society that we want through our very own.
And like what Jesus said in Matthew 7:12, do unto men what you would have them do unto you. That's the golden rule. Let's live by it. Thank you for joining us today. See you next time on our program, Defining Your Health. God bless.